Hello and welcome to another episode of Smart Freight Conversations, where we share interesting and important insights and updates on freight decarbonization and the drive towards a zero emissions logistics industry. I'm Andy Golding, Director of Strategic Services here at Smart Freight Center, or SFC as you'll hear us call it, and I'll be your host for today. Today's episode is exploring how data, insights, and measurement are really shaping decarbonization across global logistics networks, and how companies are turning emissions visibility into actionable decisions across multimodal supply chains. Joining me for this episode is Natalia Lykova, the Senior Director of Group Sustainability Insights at DSV. Natalia, welcome. Let's dive into today's episode. To start us off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, about DSV, and your core activities and your role within the organization?
Happy to. So DSV is a global logistic provider. We work across basically every transport mode: road, air, sea, rail, practically with engaging with all the industry players and across all the industries as well. So at DSV, I'm heading Group Sustainability Insights, and my role, my position comes in the intersection of sustainability, data, and business. So in simple terms, in my role, I'm not only setting the decarbonization ambitions, but I'm also there to convert them into practical, tangible measures coming from all the way from carbon emission accounting down to our decarbonization products. So it's really cross dynamic of sustainability intersections these days.
What an interesting role and what an important place to sit at that intersection of sustainability, of data, and of business, because what we know more and more is that we can't have sustainability as a nice add-on. Sustainability really needs to be deeply integrated and embedded into every decision that a business is making. But in order to make good decisions, we need good data. And in order to track our progress, we need good data. But we also have a business to run at the end of the day. So we have to make sure that we're hitting our targets, we're driving profitability, but also making good decisions for the future, not just of the planet, but also of our business and our supply chains.
Absolutely.
Very, very interesting. So then maybe looking at some market and customer insights as a global logistics services provider operating across all modes, as you've shared, what has been maybe some of DSV's most meaningful achievements in reducing emissions across your logistics services to date?
It's a very good question and a little bit also fundamental question to ask, I think. So I will stick to the fundamentals. I think that was the most complex, but also most important things that we have done is establish that foundation. And of course, that starts, as you put it, really rightfully so, with the right data foundation, emission calculations. We work a lot with Smart Freight Center on this as well, with the clean cargo, with the primary data, of course, and access through that, and many other players like Ecotransit, for example, and others. And that sets us in a good sweet spot for emission calculations. But obviously, it's only the beginning. We cannot data for the sake of data is the wrong way of looking at the problem, right? We need to use this as a leap forward to actions. So we actually connected that with our book and claim process and our products. So then we are taking the decisions based on the right foundation, and then we are beginning to decarbonize. And then the conversation actually shifts also on our customer side. Instead of asking the questions, can they deliver the CO2 report to us? It will also pull them into a conversation. What can we actually do to decarbonize?
And what an amazing way to stimulate that conversation and to drive demand both ways across the market. You know, if you, as you say, data for the sake of data is, well, what do we do with it? But when we're using it strategically, it presents a lot of meaningful opportunity.
No.
I have a question for you, and that is why. So beyond regulation, beyond compliance, beyond the necessary box that we have to tick to be able to operate in this market, what motivates DSV to be a leader in freight decarbonization? Why?
Of course, regulations play a part, an important part, but it's not the only thing, right? We have first and foremost the business, um, and also having that dialogue with the customers that have an ambition as well to decarbonize. We have set quite ambitious target ourselves. 50% reduction in scope 1 and 2 and 30% reduction in scope 3. We cannot do that alone. And that also underpins the not just the urgency of action, but the complexity of it as well. 95, more than 95% of our emissions is in scope 3. We know that we are not the only ones that have that the challenge in front of us. There's many, especially manufacturing companies, that have the same thing. So having that not just a push, but also a backing from the industries across us. And we in DSV, we put our customers' needs first in many ways. And this is also one of the business strategies for us to also offer them a sustainable logistics, not just a conventional logistics, but also the logistics that will help them to deliver on their sustainability ambitions.
Yeah, and I suppose procurement comes into that as well. You know, when your customers are looking to procure logistics solutions, it's you have to make yourself an option. You have to remain a viable player in the game. And I suppose it's a good thing because we know that this needs to happen. But then getting really practical, could you maybe share a concrete example of how, you know, you said already that you sit at this intersection between sustainability, data, and business. Maybe you could share an example of how you've brought those together to really move the needle or to help DSV or your customers to really better understand or reduce emissions.
It's a very good question because I see procurement not just a transactional thing anymore. Procurement is a vital piece of the puzzle for us. So if I am to give an advice to our listeners today, is engage your procurement process early and also spend time on working with them. That's exactly what we did actually when we, in the very beginning of our journey in the book and claim process, the first counterpart that I invited to the table was our procurement team, because that's where we start designing the process together, because that helps not only smoothing the potential tractions early, but also empowers our colleagues to have a strategic lens when they're talking to the supply chain, but also to the customers, because they can also establish that long-term lens when they're talking with the partners, and not only have a transactional approach to the process. In book and claim, we're talking various complexities. We're talking regulatory requirements like we have in Europe with the Renewable Energy Directive, where we're sprinkling that in the procurement process. So we're embedding sustainability into a normal procurement process with RFIs and so on and so forth. But we're also asking them to be on a lookout for potential partnerships, for potential good deals. And that also enables us to unlock the cost element, because that's one of the roadblocks that exists today in scaling decarbonization.
Oh, there was so much juicy stuff in that answer. You spoke about engaging the procurement process early, taking this long-term lens, leveraging procurement as a strategic lever. And I think it's so critical. Procurement is kind of where it all starts, and it's such a point of opportunity. So if we're making that our departure point, let's use it wisely. Let's make good decisions at that juncture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, now reflecting a little bit even further on this, if we are to start treating our suppliers as our partners, You can also start the engagement programs and build and co-develop and co-invent things together. And I think this is also the value chain partnerships within sustainability are becoming more prominent and more vital for us to move forward, because we can't do it alone. Scope 3 is many players combined, and only together we can unlock that potential and also make it business viable. We can also remove some of the risks that we see today. We can also cut the costs, optimize the production processes, and so on and so forth.
And that treating suppliers as partners is so critical because we know that, as you said, no company can decarbonize alone. You're relying on suppliers, partners, your entire value chain. And if we really want to make scalable change in decarbonization and really reduce emissions, then we absolutely have to be collaborating. And it is one of the things that I do think is the magic of Smart Freight Center is Smart Freight Center is able to bring all of these different parties from across the logistics value chain together to have these conversations where it may not otherwise be so easy to stimulate partnerships. But I think that this is a really nice practical one-on-one example of, okay, we know that we can't do this alone. So we're going to come to our market, to our partners, to our suppliers, and we're going to say, okay, guys, how do we do this together? And how do we drive this forward as a united front? Because it's not going to work if we all try to do this in single lanes.
Exactly.
Looking at decarbonization across modes, DSV operates across modes. You are multimodal. From your perspective, what are some of the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges when it comes to reducing emissions across multimodal logistics?
That's a good question. And there's so many things that pops to my mind, which is, let me pick. I think the opportunity, as we just also to emphasize this one more time, collaboration is one of the biggest opportunities. I think that's something that we need to unlock more, and we also need to work more across the value chain. So I think that's clearly one of the first opportunities. Scaling the technology is another opportunity. We have so many technologies out there, much more than we had in the past when we had fossil fuels. But we also need to make the right picks. So now with, for example, with road, we used biofuels for some time as a transition fuel. We also with open eyes recognize this as a transition fuel. It also comes with the risks, also sustainability risks, feedstocks, fork versus fuel dilemmas, and the way we produce, the way we use the land for producing some of the feedstocks. We know that we would need to get away from that. So now we have electrification as our core priority for DSV for road. Scaling that and bringing this to a TCO parity will also become our core battle to conquer.
Yeah.
But we know that TCO parity is not far long down the line as well. So then that gives us focus. That also challenges our operations to work towards that TCO parity. And we know in certain cases it is there. We need to learn to operate new vehicles. It's a new technology. It's also a better technology in many ways. For example, it's also more comfortable for drivers to drive an electric truck because there's less noise. So also the social element of sustainability comes through this innovation. But obviously there's a lot of challenges too. Cost is one of them. Risks. We talked a little bit about the sustainability risks too. So those bottlenecks would need to be resolved. If we take care and see the dependency across the value chain is quite a lot higher. Difference in technologies is there as well. So the two industries would need to have a pick, putting all the eggs in one basket or differentiating the portfolio across all the fuel types that now exists, from ammonia to biogas and methanol, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of choices to make still. For air, we unfortunately do not have off-the-shelf solutions besides SAF that are scalable at this point of time. And that, of course, we are all in a lookout for those new technologies for air. So there's a lot of things that is happening, very dynamic environment, and I'm, to be honest, with excitement looking in the next 10 years. There will be a lot to unpack and a lot of dilemmas to resolve as well.
Well, if you're looking at the next 10 years with excitement, given that you are working at that intersection of data, sustainability, and business, then I'm excited because you have a really good viewpoint of the possibilities that exist. And also, from what you've just shared, there is so much possibility for change that already exists, so much opportunity for action that exists. But a lot of these solutions are facing barriers to scale. A lot of them are new. We're lacking market demand. They're expensive. There's a number of different ways that we can look at the negative sides of them.
Yeah.
What needs to change to remove those barriers? And how can we really accelerate adoption across the value chain?
Such a good question. We should begin to treat sustainability as an integral part of the business. It's not something separate, and it's not something that lives in PowerPoint somewhere and discussed once a year. It needs to be part of everyday decision-making process. That's why speaking about the data is actually quite important, to equip our teams with the right systems, with the right tools, with the right knowledge. So they are taking the decisions and taking sustainability relevant decisions when they're making their normal business decisions. So if you take a freight forwarder, when they're designing a route from China to US, for example, they have the right information that will tell them the lead time, they will tell them the schedule, they will tell them the price, but it will also show the emissions. They will call CO2 potential ways to decarbonize. So those needs to come hand in hand. And at the same time, also coming back a little bit on to the topic of collaboration. I think that is also something that needs to be unlocked. We have talked within the space of Smart Freight Week also how we could do that and remove some of the barriers that exist today, cost, production risks, because those are the bottlenecks now. So with the right partnerships along the value chain, those risks can be either reduced or removed. So the good example from DSV could be partnerships that we had on SAF with Microsoft, where we have managed to have a 4-party collaboration system that allows us to reduce the cost because we are optimizing the production that is driven by the volume demand, because of course that gives a security at the very beginning of the chain where the fuel is produced. Yeah. And that also calls for those mechanisms, financial mechanisms that companies needs to build and work into their decision-making process, but also in their financial processes. We use internal carbon pricing that also helps us to channel our investments in the right processes, in the right products, and the right projects that would either address our scope 1 and 2 emissions or our scope 3 emissions. So those, when finance, sustainability data, and sustainability innovation come together, I think the right decisions can happen better.
And when you opened, you said that, we really need to treat sustainability as a part of the business. And it's so important that it is part of the nuts and the bolts of the decisions that we make, not something that we just paint on top. And that bringing that collaboration also, when we in this context talk about collaboration, it's easy to default to thinking that collaboration is actually across the value chain. But we need that collaboration internally as well, between the finance, the procurement, the operations, the planning. All of the teams need to actually be sitting together to look at, all right, we as an organization have decarbonization targets, we have goals, we have commitments that we've made, ambitious as they may be. How do we put our heads together? How do we work together to actually drive this forward? and make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think, you mentioned also partnerships, this working together, that's absolutely the core of this whole topic. What about the role of standards? And we've spoken quite a lot about collaborative initiatives, but what is the role of standards playing in increasing and creating the transparency, preventing double counting, and most importantly, building trust in freight emissions reporting?
I'll pick one critical word out of your question. Creating trust is essential here.
Yeah.
Because the credible reductions is the pathway for us to give credible decarbonization as well. So for that, sustainability is a little bit guilty of having an evolving landscape of standards.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit of out-of-body experience for some of the leadership. Because if we take financial systems, for example, they have been evolving for hundreds of years. The foundation of financial systems is not changing year on year. That's not the luxury we have in sustainability. It's definitely not the luxury we have in carbon accounting. And I think that that is also part of the translation that we need to be able to make as sustainability professionals. We need to be able to translate that uncertainty both towards our management, towards our customers, but also work on removing some of those uncertainties away. And here where Smart Freight Center is also playing a key role by helping us to stabilize and shape the landscape of those standards that are needed. Book and claim is one of the good examples where MBM framework became a reality that is now going into a step deeper into SBTi standards, into GHG protocol, and allows us to scale, impacts the actual decarbonization scalability too.
Yeah.
So that's the big kudos to Smart Trade Center to actually enabling that intersection of sustainability with regulations. And of course, at some point of time, it will transition from being a soft law into an actual hard law as well.
Yeah. And I think you said this is a developing story. It is. So much of the freight decarbonization world is a developing story because freight is developing. It's so we're constantly having to do the work. And we're doing the work whilst the goalposts are shifting as well. So, but that's no excuse to not get going and to not be taking action and managing this uncertainty. We're already managing uncertainty of supply chain, uncertainty of the climate, and that impacts the way that we can work, where we can work, how we can move our goods, where we can't move our goods, needing to find new ways to move our goods. And so that managing uncertainty almost needs to become baked into our standard way of operating so that we have that resilience. We're building resilient organizations, but we're also building organizations that are helping to create a resilient future, not just for the planet, but for us as well, for that we can keep operating at the levels that we want.
Yeah, precisely.
To wrap this episode, I want to ask you a lightning round question. You've been in this space, you've been around the block, you have a good view on how far we've come, how far we still have to go. What are you most excited about in the next 3 to 5 years of decarbonization?
Scaling our product offering. I think that's the most exciting process. It's connecting what we have been building on, connecting the knowledge, that intelligence on carbon with the actual very tangible decarbonization processes and bringing it further down to the customers. I think that's a key opportunity for us going forward and scaling that process. There's still a long way to go. It's maybe a daunting challenge, and I really want to give a word of encouragement to all that are listening to this podcast. The light is there. we are closer and closer of connecting the business value, connecting our products to decarbonization. And yes, disruption happens and it sets us back. But we are also more resilient, as you put it, to bounce back when the time is a little bit calmer.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it can be daunting, but it's okay. We can be daunted and do it anyway because other people are doing it. We have some really concrete, practical, amazing examples of decarbonization in action. And I think if anyone listening is not sure where to get started, I would say just start, you know, join organizations like Smart Freight Center, join conversations like this, because don't let being daunted stop you from taking action. Natalia, thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
You're very welcome.
If you enjoyed this episode and if you'd like to learn more about freight decarbonization, head to academy.smartfreightcenter.org, where we have a host of courses and free educational media resources available to help you accelerate your decarbonization journey. If you enjoyed this episode and if you have a colleague or a partner or a supplier who you think could benefit from the listen, please consider sharing it. Thanks for listening to Smart Freight Conversations. Until next time.